My stepson poured lavender into my shampoo, knowing I'm severely allergic, so I started feeding him dairy in secret and Uno reversed him. When I first married my husband, I thought I'd be a great stepmother to Kyle, until I met him, and the first thing he said to me was, washed up homewrecker. This set the tone for everything from then on. I wouldn't have even minded not being super close with him as long as he was cordial towards me, but he wasn't. Instead, he was verbally, and even physically abusive. I've been called names by him, even racial names. He orders me around the house whenever he wants something, and fully expects me to run and get it like I'm his assistant. Just a few weeks ago, he said he wanted me to drive to a burger place and bring him back a meal, then clapped his hands at me like I was his butler. My husband thought it was the funniest thing on earth, even tossing me my keys. That's another huge problem I have. My husband enabling Kyle no matter what. The racial names I get called are just jokes. Him ordering me around is him being a teenager. And when Kyle flicks my temple or a slap on my behind, he's just being playful. This level of abuse and enabling has become too much, and I'm going to file for divorce. But not before I finish getting back at Kyle. You see, there's one particular incident that caused everything. A few weeks ago, we were eating dinner when Kyle started talking about being suspended from school for BS reasons. His dad asked him what these BS reasons were, and Kyle said bullying a poorer kid. My jaw dropped. I asked if he actually bullied him, and Kyle said, hell no, I don't even punch him or anything, I just make jokes about his clothes or whatever. It's not my fault he's broke and sensitive. My eyes went wide, but right as I was about to say something, his dad interjected. Really? They're giving out to you over some jokes you made at some ugly poor kid. School is too soft nowadays, you gotta harden kids up. I was gobsmacked. I wanted to stay silent, but I couldn't, so I spoke up and said, funny of you to say you need to harden kids up when Kyle is the most spoiled kid I've ever met. I was immediately shot daggers by my husband, and Kyle yelled at me, what the F did you just say? We got into a heated argument which ended with my stepson flipping his chair and leaving the table. My husband proceeded to blame me for Kyle's reaction. That was my nail in the coffin. I started researching divorce lawyers, but then something happened, and although it made me more sure of divorce than ever, it also made me want to stay around just a little bit longer, because what I did to Kyle without him even knowing was so funny it was worth enduring the abuse. To understand what I mean, you need to understand I am allergic to lavender. My skin breaks out if it makes contact with it. I get painful rashes that last weeks. I went to shower the day after our argument, and at first all was good, but then my body became very itchy. I kept getting more and more sore, until I was forced to get out of the shower, dry myself off and check what was wrong. And almost instantly after getting out, my skin started breaking out into hives and rashes. I knew what they were immediately as I know what lavender does to my body, but I couldn't for the life of me figure out why there was lavender in my body wash. I checked the bottle and it was clear. I did research on the product and found no lavender anywhere. I was walking to my room extremely puzzled when I noticed my son's room door was open, and something on his table caught my eye. It was purple. I went over to inspect it, and my heart sank. It was dried lavender. He had left it out in plain sight for me to see, almost as if he was taunting me, taking pride and even joy in what he did. He was mocking what he had just done to me. It was at this exact moment the last remnants of my marriage died. I know I probably should have said something, but when my husband and stepson came home later that day, I didn't say a word. In fact, I wasn't even going to do anything about it, until my stepson mockingly asked why I was wearing long sleeve shirts and had hives on my neck. I don't know why, but that snarky comment triggered something inside me. I became determined to go out with a bang. You see, Kyle is heavily lactose intolerant, and if he wants to play the allergy game, I was more than willing. That same day I started sneaking dairy into his meals, and I've been doing so ever since. His school lunches, which are usually dairy-free, somehow end up containing cheese. His dinners are now magically cooked in butter, and milk always mysteriously finds its way into his breakfast. And because of this, Kyle is going crazy. He's constantly in the bathroom, constantly feeling nauseous, and has even become scared of all food as he's convinced his body is giving up on him. Neither of them suspect me, and just last week I heard them arguing about how much toilet paper Kyle is using. Unfortunately for me, they're going to the doctor today, and Kyle will find out he's consuming dairy. I'm afraid they're gonna know it's me. I sat in my car outside the medical center, watching through the large glass windows as my husband and Kyle walked into the waiting room. My hands trembled against the steering wheel. The moment of truth was approaching faster than I'd anticipated. My phone buzzed. A text from Kyle. Where are you? I stared at the message, typing and deleting responses. Through the window, I could see him glaring in my direction, somehow sensing my presence in the parking lot. My husband sat beside him, scrolling through his phone, oblivious to the tension radiating from his son. 20 minutes passed before they were called back. I knew the doctor would run tests, explain the symptoms, and eventually deliver the diagnosis that would change everything. My phone rang repeatedly, my husband calling. I let it go to voicemail each time, watching as frustration crossed his face through the window. Unable to sit still any longer, I started the engine and drove away. At the first red light, I checked social media. My stomach dropped. Kyle had already posted, at the doctor because someone has been poisoning me. Can't trust anyone these days. The post already had 15 reactions and several concerned comments from his friends. The grocery store parking lot was my next refuge. I needed time to think, to plan my next move, but fate had other plans. As I walked through the produce section, trying to appear normal while my world crumbled, I nearly collided with my sister-in-law pushing her cart. She grabbed my arm, her face a mask of concern and suspicion. Kyle called me this morning. He said you're trying to cull him. What's going on? I pulled away, maintaining my composure despite the accusation. The other shoppers continued their routines, unaware of the drama unfolding by the bananas. I explained that Kyle was at the doctor for stomach issues, nothing more. She didn't look convinced. The drive home felt like approaching a minefield. I could have gone to my mother's house, could have avoided the confrontation entirely, but running would make me look guilty. I had to face whatever waited for me. The kitchen looked like a war zone. Every item from our refrigerator and pantry lay scattered across the counters and floor. Empty containers, packages, and bottles created a chaotic maze. My husband stood in the center of it all, arms crossed, jaw clenched. Kyle had worked fast. I stepped carefully around a puddle of spilled juice, surveying the destruction. This was more than anger. This was a performance, a declaration of war designed to paint me as the villain in their story. Movement from the hallway caught my eye. Kyle emerged from the direction of my bedroom, phone in hand, taking pictures of my spice cabinet. He moved to my vitamin bottles next, documenting each label with the dedication of a crime scene investigator. When I confronted him about snooping through my things, he didn't even try to hide his actions. Instead, he smirked, holding up his phone like a trophy, just documenting everything for my safety. You understand, right? Can't be too careful when someone's been poisoning you. The game was no longer hidden. We stood there, stepmother and stepson, both knowing exactly what the other had done, but only one of us had proof that would hold up in the court of family opinion. His phone buzzed, then again, and again. I watched as his smirk widened with each notification. Within minutes, my phone started its own symphony of alerts. His grandmother, my husband's mother, called first, her voicemail dripping with accusation and demands for explanation. My best friend texted next, confused and worried because Kyle had messaged her boyfriend claiming I was dangerous and unstable. The character assassination had begun in earnest. While I dealt with the barrage of messages, Kyle retreated to his room, sat unsatisfied with the chaos he'd sown. My husband remained in the kitchen, silent but radiating disappointment and suspicion. Later that evening, while gathering laundry in a futile attempt at normalcy, I noticed something behind Kyle's dresser. His notebook, the one he always carried, had fallen into the gap. My hands shook as I retrieved it, flipping through pages of normal teenage scribbles until I found them. Detailed sketches of lavender plants, dated entries that corresponded exactly with my allergic reactions. He'd documented his own crime, keeping a twisted journal of his attacks. I photographed each page with my phone, my heart racing. This was evidence, real evidence, but would anyone believe me, or would they see it as a desperate attempt to deflect blame? The doorbell rang before I could return the notebook. My husband's sister had arrived, announcing she was concerned about the situation and needed to assess things herself. She walked through our front door like a detective entering a crime scene, her eyes scanning every detail, her judgment already formed before hearing my side. The next few days blurred together in a haze of accusations and investigations. Kyle had convinced his father to install cameras in the kitchen for everyone's safety. Each lens pointed strategically to capture my every move. The message was clear. I was under surveillance in my own home. My boss pulled me aside after receiving an anonymous email about my being under investigation for poisoning a minor. The workplace conversation was awkward, humiliating, and exactly what Kyle had intended. My professional reputation was now in question alongside my personal one. The family therapist my husband insisted we see barely looked at me during our session. When I tried to explain the pattern of abuse, she dismissed it as typical teenage behavior during divorces. Stepchildren often act out, she said, as if Kyle's calculated cruelty was nothing more than ordinary rebellion. But cracks were beginning to show in Kyle's perfect victim performance. During a moment alone in the garage, when he thought no one could hear, he cornered me. His mask slipped completely as he hissed threats about what else he could do to make my life miserable. What he didn't know was that I'd started recording our interactions on my phone. The universe seemed to offer its own form of justice during one of Kyle's dramatic displays. He dumped his backpack in the living room, claiming to search for poisoned snacks, when my missing earrings, the ones I'd lost months ago, tumbled out among his belongings. He'd been taking trophies, keeping souvenirs of his torment. Even my husband's coworker mentioned concerns during a recent office party, noting how aggressively Kyle had treated younger children. The pattern was becoming visible to others, though my husband remained willfully blind. I began to notice something else. Kyle's reactions to dairy were always worst on days when he'd been cruelest to me. His body seemed to rebel in proportion to his behavior, an unconscious escalation that matched his emotional state. The pattern became impossible to ignore when Kyle's girlfriend approached me during a school event. She pulled me aside near the refreshment table, her hands trembling as she explained how Kyle scared her sometimes. Her eyes darted around nervously while she described his aggressive behavior and asked if he'd always been this way. I listened carefully, recognizing the same fear I'd felt countless times. The conversation ended abruptly when Kyle spotted us from across the gymnasium. His face darkened as he stormed over, grabbing his girlfriend's wrist and pulling her away. The force he used made several parents turn to look. Later that evening, she messaged me privately through Instagram, sharing more disturbing details about his behavior. My husband's brother visited unexpectedly the following afternoon. We sat in the living room while Kyle was at practice, and he admitted something that shocked me. He explained that Kyle reminded him of their abusive father, describing patterns of behavior that made his stomach turn. This was the first crack in the family's united front, the first admission that something was deeply wrong. Kyle's campaign to destroy my social life intensified. He contacted my book club members, spreading stories about my mental instability and dangerous behavior. 2 members immediately uninvited me from upcoming meetings. The others remained silent, unsure what to believe. The isolation tactic felt calculated, designed to strip away my support system piece by piece. Something about his methods felt familiar. I remembered my husband mentioning his ex-girlfriend who had gone crazy before leaving. The pieces clicked together. This wasn't Kyle's first time systematically destroying a woman in his father's life. I found her on Facebook and sent a careful message, explaining my situation without seeming desperate. Her response arrived within hours. She confirmed everything I suspected and more. Kyle had tormented her for months before she finally escaped. She described mysterious illnesses, missing belongings, and a gradual campaign of psychological warfare that left her questioning her own sanity. Reading her words, I realized I wasn't his first victim, just his latest. My hairdresser proved unexpectedly supportive when I showed her photos of my lavender-induced hives during my appointment. She examined the angry welts on my arms and neck, shaking her head in disgust. Unlike others who dismissed my concerns, she believed me immediately and offered to testify if needed. I spent hours backing up the recording of Kyle's garage threats to multiple cloud services and my mother's email account. The audio captured his venomous words perfectly, though I knew even this might not be enough. The police officer I consulted explained that without physical harm, threats were considered a family matter. He suggested family counseling, missing the point entirely. My neighbor became an unexpected ally after noticing Kyle's aggressive behavior toward her dog. She described multiple incidents where he'd kicked at the fence or thrown objects when the animal barked. Her observations added another piece to the growing pattern of his cruelty extending beyond just me. Late-night research into Kyle's social media history revealed a treasure trove of disturbing content. His deleted posts, still visible through cached pages, contained fantasies about revenge and teaching people lessons. The timestamps showed these posts predated my arrival in his life. His darkness ran deep and started young. I reached out to Kyle's retired middle school teacher through LinkedIn. She remembered him well, describing concerning incidents from years ago. Her careful words painted a picture of a child who manipulated situations and showed little empathy for others' pain. She'd tried raising concerns, but was dismissed by administrators who saw a bright student from a good family. Kyle's next attack came through property damage. I discovered deep scratches along my car's driver's side one morning. Instead of exploding as he likely expected, I calmly documented every mark, filed an insurance claim, and installed a dash camera. My composed response seemed to unsettle him more than any emotional reaction would have. The announcement of a family vacation in 2 weeks sent panic through me. My husband presented it as a chance to reconnect and heal, but I recognized it as a trap. Being isolated with them in an unfamiliar place would leave me vulnerable. This deadline forced me to accelerate my plans. Kyle's girlfriend's mother called me after discovering disturbing texts on her daughter's phone. The messages revealed Kyle's controlling nature and veiled threats about what would happen if she left him. The mother's voice shook as she asked for advice, finally understanding why her daughter had been so withdrawn lately. Family game night became another battlefield. My husband insisted on mandatory participation, claiming it would help us bond. During Monopoly, Kyle tried every trick to provoke me, cheating openly, making snide comments, even accidentally knocking over my pieces. I remained serene throughout, which only increased his frustration. His mask slipped repeatedly as he struggled to maintain his victim persona while attacking me. The next morning, Kyle made an unexpected offer. He cornered me in the kitchen, proposing to forget everything if I gave him my car and $5,000. I pretended to consider it, recognizing this as both blackmail and an admission of his orchestrated campaign. His greed had finally overtaken shaken his caution. My husband's brother's wife approached me at a family barbecue. She'd been documenting Kyle's behavior at family gatherings for years, worried about her own children's safety around him. Her collection of videos and photos showed a pattern of aggression toward younger cousins and destructive behavior when he didn't get his way. A crucial discovery changed everything. While organizing old receipts, I found evidence that the lavender incident happened before our dinner argument, not after. Kyle had been planning his attack for weeks, making his father's later defense of reactive teenage behavior completely false. The timeline proved premeditation. When I confronted Kyle with this discrepancy during a family dinner, he stammered about me being confused. His inability to explain the dates revealed the first major crack in his story. Even his father looked uncertain as Kyle fumbled for explanations that made no sense. The ex-girlfriend shared her old journal entries with me, describing mysterious illnesses during her relationship with my husband. The symptoms matched mine exactly: rashes, hives, sudden allergic reactions to products she'd used for years. We both recognized the pattern now. Understanding that Kyle had perfected his methods over time, family dynamics shifted dramatically as more relatives noticed inconsistencies in Kyle's stories. His grandmother started avoiding family dinners. His uncle openly questioned the poisoning narrative. The united front supporting Kyle crumbled as each person independently reached the same conclusion: something didn't add up. My divorce lawyer friend agreed to help pro bono after I shared the full story. She recognized the patterns of abuse immediately and began preparing documentation. Her professional perspective validated what I'd known for months. This wasn't teenage rebellion, but calculated domestic abuse. The breakthrough came during an argument between Kyle and his now ex-girlfriend. In his anger, he shouted about teaching her a lesson, like with the lavender, while her mother stood in the doorway. The woman's face went pale as she processed this admission. Kyle realized his mistake immediately, but the damage was done. 3 neighbors approached me separately to apologize for initially believing Kyle's claims. They'd watched the situation unfold and recognized the truth through his increasingly erratic behavior. Their support meant more than they knew, slowly rebuilding my reputation in the community. Kyle's social isolation accelerated after his girlfriend broke up with him publicly at school. Her friends, now aware of his abusive behavior, created a protective circle around her. His own friend group began distancing themselves as his stories became increasingly inconsistent and his behavior more volatile. The ex-girlfriend's revelation about Kyle's mother hit me like a thunderbolt. She'd left after experiencing mysterious illnesses similar to ours. The pattern extended back further than anyone realized. Kyle had been perfecting his methods since childhood, starting with the woman who'd given birth to him. I became vigilant about protecting Kyle's younger cousins during family gatherings. Without making accusations, I ensured they were never alone with him. Other family members began following my lead, creating an unspoken safety network around the children. Book club members started reaching out with apologies after learning the truth from multiple sources. They'd compared notes and realized Kyle's stories didn't align. The community support I'd thought was lost began reforming, stronger for having been tested. Kyle's attempts to turn his friend group against me backfired spectacularly. His inconsistent stories and desperate behavior made them suspicious. Several approached me at school events, apologizing for believing his initial claims and sharing their own concerns about his stability. The moment my husband witnessed Kyle screaming at me changed everything. He'd come home early from work, entering through the garage while Kyle thought we were alone. The venom in his son's voice, the threats, the pure hatred, none of it could be explained away as teenage angst. My husband's face went white as he processed what he'd heard. My support network solidified as neighbors began checking on me regularly. They'd coordinate casual visits, ensuring I was never isolated for long. This informal protection system developed organically as more people recognized the danger I faced. Kyle's girlfriend's mother confronted me at school pickup, initially suspicious but gradually understanding. As I calmly explained the situation, she connected it with her daughter's descriptions of Kyle's behavior. Her transformation from skeptic to ally happened in real time as pieces clicked into place. With the family vacation 3 days away, I filed divorce papers quietly. My lawyer friend helped me arrange temporary housing and plan my exit strategy. This wasn't about drama or revenge. It was about survival and strategic extraction from an increasingly dangerous situation. Extended family gatherings revealed the full extent of Kyle's isolation. Everyone except my husband now recognized his troubling behavior patterns. Conversations stopped when he entered rooms. Children were quietly redirected away from him. The family's judgment was silent but unanimous. A moment of clarity struck as I watched Kyle interact with his younger cousins. Staying in this marriage meant potentially subjecting future children to this toxic environment. The thought of a baby facing Kyle's cruelty solidified my resolve. Some risks were too great to take. I packed essential belongings while the family attended a movie, methodically preparing for my departure. Each item went into boxes labeled for donation, disguising my true intentions. The plan required precision and emotional control I didn't know I possessed. Kyle discovered my suitcase hidden in the closet and immediately texted his father. His message was frantic, filled with accusations and demands for immediate return. The final confrontation was approaching faster than I'd planned. My husband arrived home to find me loading boxes into my car. Kyle stood on the porch, filming everything on his phone, shouting about evidence and proof of my guilt. The scene felt surreal. The end of a marriage playing out like a bad reality show, recorded for an audience that would never see the full truth. The weight of everything, the abuse, the gaslighting, the slow destruction of my life, settled on my shoulders as I closed the trunk. But beneath that weight was something else: relief. The game was ending. Win or lose, I would soon be free from this toxic dance of accusation and retaliation. The extended family intervention happened without me present. My husband's brother later described how relatives shared their witnessed incidents: Kyle's aggression at gatherings, his treatment of younger cousins, the pattern they'd all noticed but never discussed. The family matriarch, my husband's mother, finally acknowledged what she'd been denying for years. My support network helped move my remaining belongings while my husband worked. Neighbors carried boxes, friends provided trucks, and my mother supervised the entire operation. The efficiency of their coordination demonstrated how many people had been waiting to help once I made the decision to leave. Word spread quickly through my husband's workplace about our separation. Several colleagues approached him with relief, admitting their long-held concerns about Kyle's behavior during office events. His professional reputation crumbled as people felt free to share what they'd observed but never mentioned. I presented the timeline of events to my husband's brother, showing him the documented evidence spanning 3 years. The meticulous organization, photos, recordings, witness statements, painted an undeniable picture. His face grew pale as he recognized the systematic nature of Kyle's abuse. My husband faced an uncomfortable truth when his brother pointed out that 3 women had now fled his son's abuse: Kyle's mother, the ex-girlfriend, and now me. The pattern was impossible to ignore, though he still struggled to accept his role in enabling it. My lawyer presented our evidence to my husband's attorney, making clear my strong position. The notebook entries, the recordings, the witness statements, everything pointed to a pattern of domestic abuse that would devastate them in court. The attorney's expression shifted from confidence to concern as he reviewed the documentation. The family matriarch made her position clear after learning about the full pattern of behavior. She announced she would no longer longer enable Kyle, cutting off the financial support she'd been providing. This decision rippled through the family, emboldening others to establish their own boundaries. 3 nights after I'd moved out, Kyle appeared at my mother's house at 2 a.m. The doorbell rang repeatedly, waking the entire neighborhood. When we checked the security footage the next morning, we found lavender scattered across the doorstep, his calling card, his final attempt at intimidation. The security system captured everything clearly. Kyle's face, the lavender, the timestamp showing his restraining order violation. Yet when confronted, he claimed I'd orchestrated the entire incident for sympathy. Some family members wondered if he might be right, doubt creeping back into their minds. I handled the police report alone, my lawyer out of town for a conference. The officer took my statement, collected the footage, and documented the lavender. The process felt routine to him. Another domestic incident, another restraining order violation. I stood strong throughout, refusing to let Kyle's games shake my resolve. The decision to pursue a restraining order came with full knowledge it would escalate the situation, but safety mattered more than avoiding conflict. I filed the paperwork, submitted the evidence, and prepared for whatever retaliation might follow. The judge reviewed the doorbell footage alongside the pattern of harassment I'd documented. The emergency order was granted based on the clear evidence of escalating behavior. Kyle would have to stay away or face criminal charges. My husband brought Kyle to my mother's house the next evening, demanding I drop the restraining order. They stood on the sidewalk, legally unable to approach closer, while my husband shouted about overreactions and misunderstandings. Neighbors watched from windows as the scene unfolded. I walked outside carrying Kyle's notebook, the one documenting his lavender attacks. Page by page, I showed my husband the dated entries, the sketches, the planning that went into each assault. His face crumbled as he read his son's own words describing the pleasure he took in causing my pain. Kyle's composure shattered completely. He screamed about me being just like his real mother, another woman trying to destroy their family. The abandonment issues underlying his behavior erupted in full view of gathering neighbors. His father stood frozen, finally seeing the depth of his son's disturbance. My husband's brother arrived with police, having received threatening texts from my husband about forcing me to comply. He'd chosen justice over family loyalty, recognizing the danger of the situation. The officers separated everyone, taking statements while Kyle continued his meltdown. The choice between pressing charges and accepting an uncontested divorce with settlement weighed heavily. Prosecution would mean court dates, testimony, continued connection to this toxic situation. The divorce option offered clean separation, financial security, and most importantly, complete disconnection from both abusers. I chose freedom over revenge. The decision meant Kyle would avoid criminal charges, but it also meant I could walk away permanently. No shared custody battles, no forced interactions, no ongoing legal proceedings tying me to this nightmare. Kyle's realization that his father was choosing money over defending him triggered another explosion. He turned his rage on his father, accusing him of abandonment, of being weak, of caring more about assets than family. The dynamic between them shifted permanently in that moment. My lawyer discovered my husband's attempts to hide assets during the divorce proceedings. Bank accounts moved, property transfers initiated, retirement funds shifted. The court didn't look kindly on such deception. The settlement increased substantially as penalty for his attempted fraud. Kyle's final threatening text arrived while under police monitoring for the restraining order. The message violated the order immediately, demonstrating his inability to control his behavior even under legal scrutiny. This final act sealed his fate in the system. The papers freeing me from both abusers were signed in my lawyer's office. Each signature felt like shedding weight I'd carried for years. The legal dissolution of our connection meant true freedom. No financial ties, no forced communication, no shared obligations. Kyle entered court-ordered therapy after a shoving match with his mother's new boyfriend who defended her during one of his tirades. The incident, witnessed by multiple neighbors, finally forced the system to intervene. His pattern of violence against women could no longer be ignored or excused. My mother changed all locks and installed a comprehensive security system. Cameras covered every angle, motion sensors protected the perimeter, and panic buttons were placed strategically throughout the house. We prepared for potential escalation while hoping it wouldn't come. The new apartment in a different town offered a fresh start. Small but secure, it represented freedom from the toxic environment I'd endured. I began trauma therapy with a specialist in domestic abuse, working to process the psychological damage inflicted over years. The ex-girlfriend reached out about forming a support group for Kyle's victims. Together with his mother, we created a safe space for healing and validation. Our shared experiences, once sources of isolation and shame, became foundations for mutual support and understanding. 6 months later, life had transformed completely. The restraining order became permanent after Kyle's continued violations. I taught self-defense classes to domestic abuse survivors, channeling my experience into helping others protect themselves. Kyle remained in court-ordered therapy after another incident involving a female classmate. The evidence of his dairy poisoning stayed sealed in my safety deposit box. Insurance never needed because I'd chosen complete disconnection over mutual destruction. Some battles are won not through defeating your enemy, but by walking away whole, building a new life where they can never reach you again.